Like, let's talk about like Bobby the Builder, right? Let's talk about that. Like, I can safely say, and I think, people that know me, like I built a really good career. I've done a lot of things that I think anybody would love to do. I mean, as far as athletics, being in academia, I graduated, with honors from Barton College. You know, athletics, academics. I mean, even with the work I'm doing right now with Blacks in Technology, right? I built and I'm still building, right? So I had to really look at, okay, what's my journey? What story do I have to tell? And then how can I use that to help other people build, right? So look at your journey, what you bring to the table. What's your value? What's your value proposition? If you walk in a room, what's your value? You have a few things that when you walk in a room, this is what people want. At least somebody in this room is at least gonna care about one of these things that I'm bringing to the table, right? And then you build your brand off that. What's your message? And everything like that. So especially in this digital age, you know, if you don't have content, if you don't have any type of social media presence, as the world continues to get more digital, no one's gonna know you. Like, no one's gonna know you, and I think that's a hard pill for people to swallow.
Yo, plug me in. Plug me in to the STEM Plug podcast.
So welcome to another episode of the STEM Plug podcast, episode 10. That's right, episode 10. We moving on up, right? So today, we've dove in and plugged in with a lot of different STEM professionals that are in a lot of different areas of STEM, right? But today, I really wanted to plug in with an amazing guy that is, not only a tech star, but he's also a former basketball star as well. So I feel like it was very important that we dove in with Bobby, a.k.a. Bobby the Builder. Hashtag Bobby the Builder. How's it going, Bobby?
It's going good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, bro. I'm doing good. So just a little bit about Bobby, right? Bobby is a senior tech recruiting leader with over 14 years of experience in the industry. That's right, 14 years. And Bobby has worked with some of the top 500 Fortune companies that some of the top companies that you might want to work for, right? So you got to make sure you're plugging in with Bobby today. So with even all that experience, right? Like I said, Bobby was a basketball star in college. And he even won an NCAA championship. So Bobby, let's kind of plug in, right? So we have all of this, tech experience you have, but we want to kind of go backwards a little bit, right?
Okay.
Just begin how your journey began, right? You're a tech recruiter now, but I really want to learn from your story. Let's start from the beginning. Where basketball?
Okay.
How did that start? Where did your interest come? How did that kind of begin? Tell me, bring us back a little bit.
Yeah, man. So I'm originally from Fuquay Varina, North Carolina, right here in the heart of the Triangle area. And I grew up playing basketball really most of my life. I remember I was playing Little League, organized basketball since I was like 8 years old, right? So I always had a passion for it, always had a love for the game, right? So like every young boy, I had hoop dreams, right? You want to go you want to go to the NBA, I'm here, here in North Carolina, I want to play for the Tar Heels one day, all of that. So, I grew up really doing that. Like, basketball was like a big part of my family, period. Like my dad played basketball. He was a local star in his own right. And, I kind of carried on that torch. My cousin, he's playing D1 basketball now. So I passed the torch to him. So now he's doing well. So it's been in my family. Went to Fuquay Arena High School, 4-year varsity letterman, highly successful there. We did a lot of great things while I was there. I accomplished a lot there. Made, a lot of all-star teams, got a lot of exposure. I was, really somebody who was like a D1/D2 prospect, got a lot of like all-state honors, here in North Carolina. I was like the star of the team. I was a star. I was like the point forward. I was doing everything, right? Oh. Yeah. So really enjoyed my time there, played AAU basketball with some some pretty notable guys that came from this area, right? And then got a full athletic scholarship. But a lot of people don't know I got a full academic scholarship too to Barton College. Yeah, so Barton College, at the time was one of the top D2 programs in the nation. It just made perfect sense, to kind of do that. And they still are. They're still like one of the top programs, the D2 programs. So we played a lot of the CIAA schools, because CIAA, a lot of people don't know it's D2. So we play a lot of those schools. Got a lot of victories at some of those schools too. But, my senior year, 2007, won the Division II National Championship. That was probably the best, probably most significant moment in my life. It's something I think about every day. You get the ring and the trophy and all that, and you can always say for the rest of your life that you are that, right? So, did that well. I was definitely a student athlete, though. I was in the classroom. I was there to play ball, but, a lot of people don't know I got that academic scholarship, too. So I was really serious about my grades, really serious about my books. I didn't want to just be just a token black guy athlete on campus. To me, that was just unacceptable. I knew I had more to bring to the table. And I'll be honest with you, I knew that, I did the math when I was younger about, the probability of making it. Didn't give up on my dream, but, I had to be realistic. Like, okay, what other attributes, what other qualities will I have to bring to the community or bring to the world, right? So I was definitely in my books.
Okay.
And then, I tried to do some like overseas ventures and things like that. That didn't quite work out. Man, I wish we had like Instagram and YouTube and TikTok back in like 2007, man. Cause like even like this guy mentor he's actually going to Barton College too. And like my cousin, he plays D1, man. Like it's so easy to get seen now. Like just the exposure, digitally, which we can talk about. That didn't really quite work out, I'll be honest with you. It didn't. And, I'm okay with it. I'm at peace with it. I got the most I could out of the game of basketball. I look back on my basketball career. I'm very proud. I did things that, people where I come from, basketball-wise, didn't get a chance to do. I opened up a lot of doors. I trailblazed a lot for my community and then for my family, too. So, and then, I became a technical recruiter. And got into that, and 14 years in the game, man, and loved every minute of it.
Wow, okay. Now you plugged us in with a lot right there. Right? So my question is, you kind of answered it, but my question that I wanted to go into, you already had that, knowledge of, okay, I need to have another backup plan in case this sports things don't work out. I know a lot of people get into, sports within college, and they just, one-minded. I'm going to the pros, different stuff like that. But with that being said, like, did you have a feeling in your head, like, I actually want to go pro? Like, so was there any doubts or anything when you wanted to make a change and like, oh, okay, I'm just going straight tech? Were there any doubts that came about?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't give up on my dream. That's what I wanted to do. I think really what my dream was is I wanted to be impactful. I think that was really the bigger goal. Right, I knew it was either going to be basketball or it was going to be something. And I think that was my thing, right? I think I knew really young that I just wanted to be impactful. I wanted the last name to be great. Whatever I was going to do, I was like, I need to be successful. I had a hunger and an urge to be successful early. And, I think that for me, the way I got into technical recruiting really is that, like, after college, hey, those things didn't work out for me as far as, like, from a basketball standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. And that's okay, but, I actually went to a staffing agency to see if they could help me find a job, okay? And it was a small staffing agency in downtown Raleigh. It was called Headway. Mm-hmm. And I went there. I was like, hey, I'm fresh out of college, man. This is like years ago, man. Like, so the landscape has changed totally, right? But, I went there, got my suit and all of that, and it was baggy, I was this young dude, and they saw something in me. I was trying to get a job at one of their clients. And it's like, hey, man, you should work here. So, man, I worked as a collections agent for them for like 2 years. Wow. Yeah. But so basically what I was doing is just like, I had a list, right? And we had like corporate clients that had like, we had billed for our services. So my job was just to be on the phone every day, just calling people. calling like large companies. You know, like, hey, you got this invoice, you know, $14,000. Just want to get, you know, some sort of commitment, right? So I was just on the phone all the time, and I was talking to like CFOs, right, and everything like that, and really learning how to communicate to them effectively. Little did I know that experience was going to help me later on in life when I became a recruiter, you know, a senior recruiter much later. So I was interested in the actual business side. Because on the other side of the office, I saw these people, like, they going to meetings, they going to lunches, they talking to people. Like, I'm like, wow, this looks fun. What is this? That's like, oh, yeah, that's the recruiting division. I was like, I want to go over there. So I went over there, and I wanted to recruit right away, right? They was like, nope, you're going to sit right here, and you're going to do all the administrative stuff first. So I was basically doing job postings. I was managing like all the search accounts. I was listening. They basically made me listen to phone screens, and I sit in the interview. Something I'm ready. It's like, no, you're gonna sit here. You're gonna listen. You're gonna shadow some stuff, and then I started like, okay, doing pre-screens. Reference checks were like a big thing back in the day. So then I started doing that. But I would just sit there and just watch people interview. And I saw, like, throughout the years, man, I did that for like a good 2 years. And I was getting real frustrated because they won't let me get on the phone. They won't let me talk to nobody. I wasn't going to any conferences. But it was all for a reason. And the reason I say all that is because I had no idea that when I was on the phone calling these C-suite executives, how valuable that was going to be later on in my career on how to communicate, how to get on the phone and get buy-in. You know, I'm like, 22 years old at the time. I'm talking to CFOs. Talking to CIOs, you know, I didn't know that just sitting there watching interview after interview after interview after interview, just shadowing and listening in, I started seeing a lot of trends. I started seeing things that made candidates successful, but also saw a lot of things that made candidates not be successful. So in a lot of ways, them telling me to kind of just look and watch and listen, I think set me apart from a lot of people who get in the recruiting game, because I had a chance to kind of experience it and just sit there and just take notes. And then I started like looking at things the recruiters were doing. Like started really like paying attention to them. So a lot of times, a lot more is caught than taught. Sometimes just being in the room, sometimes just being in proximity and just knowing when to talk, but also knowing when to be quiet can help you go a long way. And they quite literally, like, hey, be quiet. You know, and just watch. To kind of wrap this up, because I feel like I'm being a little long-winded.
Nah,
but I got a lot, man. I got a lot, man. It's a lot I can give you, man. But I started recruiting, and I started recruiting like non-tech stuff, right? But the reason why I'm so passionate about, you know, people being in the tech industry, and I'm just gonna say it today, especially Black people, is because it's lucrative. You know, like when I was in the agency world. When I first started, I wasn't recruiting any tech roles. I wasn't working with any tech companies. But I soon realized, as you know, I started navigating my way around, there was more money to be earned as a technical recruiter. Anything attached to the tech industry is lucrative. So as an agency recruiter, you got, you know, base salary plus commission, right? So I was, you know, thinking about like my commission. You had higher earnings placing software engineers, or even like, you know, robotics engineers, cybersecurity people. So it was just more lucrative. It was a more opportunity for me to earn. So that's how I got into the tech industry. That's how I got into tech recruiting. I was scared straight though. I knew it was more lucrative, but I was concerned about the learning curve. You know, because I'm not a technologist, and I've never had to be a technologist to be a recruiter and do stuff, you know, do the coding, do the programming, doing the networking. But to be able to get on the phone and talk to these people and they feel confident, like, okay, this is a recruiter that knows what they're talking about. That was big. And then able to be able to communicate that with hiring managers as well in the tech space. You got to have some sort of learning curve, right? You got to be able to talk conversationally, right? And that's one of the things that when I mentor, you know, recruiters that I work with, especially the technical recruiters, you got to be able to talk about it conversationally. No one's expecting you. If you can code and program and do all of that, that's fantastic. But You don't have to do that. You need to know how to speak conversationally. So I was scared because I wasn't exposed to this technology. I didn't know the difference between a front end developer and a back end developer at the time. I do now, but I was like, I was shook, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that was why it was scary, and also, and this is, keep in mind, I'm a younger, more green recruiter.
Yeah.
Technical recruiting is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I was about to say, like, you brought up a great point that I really wanted to plug into. You know, I know you mentioned about, like, you know, the foundational job that really helped you. But do you have any tips or gems of how you really navigated that learning curve? So, you know, like you said, it was a curve you had to adjust to and stuff. You have any tips you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, like, you know, when I was coming in the game, man, like, there was not all these different references and things that you could really go to, right? So for me, how I learned is just talking to techies on the phone all the time, just talking to them, like learning through like pre-screens, learning through doing like phone interviews, learning through talking to the hiring managers. And it was just hearing it, just continuously hearing it and hearing it and hearing it. Because of what I noticed, that no matter what tech professional I talked to in the world, they all said the same thing. So this must quite literally be what a software engineer does. This must be, you know, what an implementation specialist does. This must be what an IT project manager does. And I started seeing trends and correlations. So I was like, aha. So, you know, everybody in this landscape is saying the same thing. So these core things here, these core principles, is what makes up an IT project manager. These core things are what makes up an R&D engineer, right? As I got later on in my career, and, you know, more things like YouTube became prominent. There was more, you know, books for reference and things like that. I started to learn, you know, kind of adapt to those resources. I always tell people that's like looking to break into, honestly, man, I don't even like using the word breaking into tech, because that implies that you don't belong there.
Okay, plug it in. What's the word we should be using?
I mean, just simple words like transitioning in,
Okay.
you know, or, you know, things like that. I don't like, because you think about breaking into tech, that's like assuming that you're not supposed to be there anyway.
Yeah.
Because usually when you have to break into something, it's because you don't belong.
Right.
So I'm trying to use different phrasing. So, but anytime you're trying to transition into a new role or a new industry, you know, I always say you want to make sure that first you know what you want to do. You know what I mean? And I knew what I wanted to do.
Okay.
Right. A lot of times when people are trying to trying to transition into tech, they're using that period of going to get all these certifications and going to get all these books. You're spending money trying to figure it out, but you end up wasting money. You need to figure out what you want to do and why you want to do it. Right. So when it's time to go take boot camps, it's time to go get certifications, you can spend your money wisely. So if you're trying to do cybersecurity, you can go that direction, right? If you're trying to do tech sales, you can go that direction. So I think that's the biggest thing. I knew what I wanted to do, and I figured that out before I started. And I think that's the biggest piece, is just figuring out what you want to do before you start studying it, getting around people, and just pay attention to what they do.
Okay.
And pick their brain. That's really the main thing. I got some other stuff, but man,
it's you got me thinking now, right? Like I'm all about mindset, right? You got to have that mindset first before you even go into something. So you as an athlete, right? I know you have a specific mindset when you go into a different game. When it's game time, you got to go against a different team. So what advice would you have to like somebody that may be in college star, or basketball star, or something right now, and they're listening to this podcast and they're hearing you, how you went from a basketball star to now a tech star? What advice would you have to tell to them about like maybe how their current mindset they have as an athlete can maybe help them transition into a tech role?
This is a good question. Number one, always keep your competitive advantage. Always keep your competitive juices. You're going to need that. Like the tech industry or just any industry period is competitive. You're going to deal with competition for the rest of your career. And don't run away from that. Don't let people, oh, well, you're too competitive. No, life is competitive. You know, everything that we do has an element of competition to it, whether you're competing against your coworkers, your peers, another business. And let's go ahead and say this, competing against yourself and trying to do better than what you did before. That's all an athlete is all about. How can I had these skills last year. What do I need to do in the off season to up my skills? how can I outperform what I did before, right? So always keep your competitive edge. I know I said competitive. I think I said competitive advantage earlier, but always keep your competitive edge, right? The next thing, remain coachable. I don't care how great you become at something or how good you are. At some point in your career, you're going to need coaching at something, right? I think a lot of times when we get good at something, we think, oh, man, I don't need to learn no more. No, absolutely not. Like Serena Williams had a coach. You know what I mean? Michael Jordan had a coach. Kobe had coaches. He had multiple coaches. You know what I mean? Like, Tiger Woods got a coach. You're going to need a coach on something eventually in your career. So remain coachable. Those are definitely some things. Also, one thing I learned as an athlete, and this is in the tech industry, this is any industry, you got to be able to handle the highs and lows well and effectively. You're going to have some successes. You can't get too cocky with the successes. You're going to have some low moments. You can't get too low in the low moments. You got to figure out what those lessons are. You got to learn them, and then you got to continue to grow and get better, right? These are all things that you can take from an athletic field or court, and you can apply to the tech industry. Another thing, too, that I think is really important as far as the tech industry, you always need to be practicing your skills. Always. As an athlete, I don't even have to give the athletic perspective. You use the off season or you use times when you're not in practice to practice on your bank shot, your ball handling, your pivot moves. We're talking about basketball right now, whatever sport applies to you. But in this tech field, man, the skills are always, as the technology advances, the skill level is going to advance too, right? So you need to quite literally understand, like, you need to be practicing your skills outside of your day-to-day work. And you need to be, if you're a software developer, you need to be in leak code. You need to be doing medium to hard level software development projects. You need to have a GitHub link with all your projects in there, and so you can display problems that you solved outside of work. Like, you always got to be upskilling. Just like an athlete, you're always upskilling. In the tech world, you always got to be upskilling, because as these technological advances happen, so do the tech skills have to advance. The job descriptions are only going to, the requirements are only going to get more technical. So for you to just kind of just rest in your laurels, it's just not a good look. Yeah. Because somebody else is going to be somewhere, they're going to be hacking, they're going to be doing all this stuff, or you need to be doing that too in your off time.
Yeah. I always say you got to do it while they sleep, right? I'm up at 5 a.m, Yeah. But, that's dope. I see why you call yourself Bobby the Builder now, because you building out some amazing gems for our listeners. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt.
So talking about personal brand, right? That's very important outside of your technical skills and different stuff like that. So how do you manage your personal brand, right? And how do you kind of identify your personal brand with your your basketball skills and then into your career transition? How do you identify your personal brand?
Yeah, like the first thing I had to do was like really kind of look at my journey, right? Like, let's talk about like Bobby the Builder, right? Let's talk about that. Like, I can safely say, and I think people that know me, like I built a really good career. I've done a lot of things that I think anybody would love to do. I mean, as far as athletics, being in academia, I graduated with honors from Barton College. Athletics, academics. I mean, even with the work I'm doing right now with Blacks in Technology, right? I built, and I'm still building, right? So I had to really look at, okay, what's my journey? What story do I have to tell? And then how can I use that to help other people build, right? So look at your journey, what you bring to the table. What's your value? What's your value proposition? If you walk in a room, what's your value? You have a few things that when you walk in a room, this is what people at least somebody in this room is at least going to care about one of these things that I'm bringing to the table, right? And then you build your brand off that. What's your message? And everything like that. So especially in this digital age, if you don't have content, if you don't have any type of social media presence, as the world continues to get more digital, no one's going to know you. Like, no one's gonna know you, and I think that's a hard pill for people to swallow. Like, even even when I was managing recruiters, I always wanted a recruiter that had a brand and a reputation of some point, right? Like, because are you on LinkedIn? Are you posting? Do people know what you care about? Do people know what you're passionate about? Do people know what your subject matter expertise is? Or do you just get off LinkedIn at 5 o'clock? Like, what is it that you bring to the table? What is it that you care about? And I think that's key. Like, really taking advantage of the world that we live in digitally. I was telling you, like, when I was in high school and college, man, they didn't have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And, you look at these kids now, they're getting all these NIL deals, is because they created a digital footprint. So why, as we as professionals in the corporate space, why don't we have that same mindset? You got to have a digital footprint. There's recruiters like myself and other recruiters that I know that are close friends of mine. We all have a digital footprint. And the reason why people want to work with us versus a recruiter who ain't posting, doing anything, is because they don't know you. They'll rather work with us because we're giving value to the community, right? So that's another thing with branding too. What do you got to be able to? What are you passionate about? What are you caring about? What are you giving to people when you're not working, right? So that's really what branding is all about, in my opinion.
That's dope, bro. Like, I'm just even thinking about, like, my personal brand. Like, one of the top things in my personal brand is I always try to add value to people, right? I'm not looking about what they can give to me. I'm actually looking about what I can give to them. So when I network and I meet somebody new, I introduce myself. I'm like, all right, how can I help you out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really helped me develop my personal brand, put myself out there, and really make myself relatable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's dope.
Yeah.
But,
if I could add to that,
yeah, that's
like, yeah, if it's okay. Like, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've said it on, like, shows before, podcasts before. Networking is a value exchange.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you're going into networking situations or you go into community only thinking about what you're gonna get out of people, you kind of selling yourself short. Like, who do you think in these spaces? Who do you think people are gonna remember? Somebody who's always asking, or somebody who poured into them as well? Somebody who could help them out, right? Somebody, you may not be the contact, but you may have a contact for somebody. So that's what networking is actual network. Is when two people get together, they talk about, okay, hey, I can help you with this, I can help you with that. And then you continuously talk. And then you find out actually they need help with something else. Hey, I'm not that person, but I know somebody who can. You bring them in, then your network of two becomes a network of three. And then you start talking amongst each other, right? Business, getting to know each other and things like that. Then that network of three becomes a network of 7. That's a network. But you can only do that if you're bringing something to the table.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
yeah, that's a gem, bro. Okay, so let's plug in, right? So we know you a top level senior tech recruiter, right?
yeah.
So what are the skills and the qualities that you're kind of looking for when you're recruiting?
Like on the resume or just in general?
Just in general.
Just in
On
general.
the resume or like, what are you see these key skills, you're like, all right, this might be the one. Like, what are those skills?
I would say, like, let's just talk about interviewing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the key things that actually, no, let's go back to the resume, because you gotta have a optimal resume before you even get an interview. Resume, I always say you want to focus on when you got your resume. Recruiters are looking for impact, not necessarily job duties and responsibilities. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like, what I mean by impact, you got to have some data on your resume. I want to find out, where you went, and also when you were there, what difference did you make? What impact, right? If you successfully hit your sales quotas, I need to know what the sales quota was. I need to know if you met or exceeded it, and I need to know how many times you did it. These are things that's going to get people excited. If you save the company XYZ amount of dollars, that's something that's going to get a recruiter excited. If you developed an app, and because you developed this app, wherever the app was created for, it reduced the amount of trouble tickets for end users. If you're a UI UX designer, okay, the user interface that you created, okay, that directly correlated with the user experience, did that itself help, drive up sales? Did it help drive up clicks? That's information that we need to know. I don't need to know that you coded in C. Like, we already know that, that's going to be, in the skills section, but it's impact. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you show impact? You can do it through data and numbers. Like we were just talking about, like, like you brought in XYZ revenue for this quarter, right? Like, what did you do, right? Or some people's positions aren't necessarily measured off like data and metrics and numerical figures. Okay, so did you create something that the company or the department kept? Did you create a system, or did you take something and make it better? Okay, and then how did that impact the department? How did that impact the team? Like, for example, I'll talk about myself. When I was at Amazon Web Services, again, one of the Fortune 500 companies I worked at, right? I did this round table. So I got, like, it was virtual. So I got all these recruiters together to help source people and find people for the round table for candidates to come, because we were targeting techies, right? Software engineers, cybersecurity, also like IT project managers and product managers too. So I got all the recruiters that source people to come, right? But then I set up a panel of like directors and managers in tech, right, that were at Amazon, right? I set a goal, and I worked with my manager. I was like, if we get one hire out of this in 45 days, I think that'll be a win, right? We ended up getting 3 hires in 41 days. That's on my resume now. That's impact. So think of something that you did that made an impact. And I think a lot of times the reason why people don't have it on their resume, and I said this in the video I did on YouTube, they don't count their wins. When there's something good happens, they don't record it. Your manager sends you a job well done email. You need to take that email, you need to forward it to your personal email, you need to file it in a folder. You get a report that, hey, this project was successful. And if you're a key contributor in that project, you need to snatch that thing. You need to send it to your personal email. If they don't let you send emails because of some sort of security gateway reasons, take a photo of it, screenshot of it, and save it in a folder. A lot of people, they go through all their career and they go through all these companies and they never count their wins. They never take count of it. So when it's time for you to update your resume, when it's time for you to look for that next job, you got a catalog of wins from the last 5 to 7 years that you can just plug in your resume. And those are going to be the things that's going to get people excited and going to want the recruiter to talk to you and move you to a phone screen, right? So to answer your question, people don't have enough data on their resume, right? When we're talking about soft skills, I mean, just interviewing itself is a skill, not even being able to tell a story in an interview. I think that's a big thing. The interview is set up as such, so we want you to be able to contextualize the experience and skills that you say you have on your resume. We want you to be able to add some color to it. So when you get in an interview, just being able to communicate and tell a story. And I see a lot of people that, like I said, I've said in numerous interviews my entire career, people who were my candidates, people who weren't. And I'm just surprised that people who've been doing the same thing day in and day out for years, and they can't get in front of like me and you and tell a story.
Yeah, that brings up a great question. You just had,
I know, man. I'm giving you a lot, man.
No, you really had me thinking, because I'm like, I meet a lot of people that I know what they actually do, but then when I see their resume, I'm just like, why you leaving off so much stuff? And it's almost like some people like want to dim their light sometimes, and I'm just like, you got to brag about yourself. You got to brag and tell about all these amazing things that you're doing, that you're saving millions of dollars, that you're working with millions of dollars worth of automation, different equipment, stuff like that. But it's like people want to kind of almost dim their light. I know that's a mindset thing, right? Where do you feel like that really comes from, of people not wanting to really brag about themselves and can't really explain in depth about the story of their experience?
I mean, I have one thing that first comes to mind. Again, I'm just referencing, 14 years of stuff I've seen and heard.
Yeah.
I mean, first off, I think that people do, but they just like I said, they don't have it on their resume because they haven't kept up with it. When they got a performance review and the performance review was good, they didn't keep a personal log of it. So then you're trying to spend time remembering all this key information, and you don't know, right? So that's one thing. Another thing too is that, I mean, I'm just kind of making this up on the fly, man. I think people have a humble complex. You know what I mean? Like, I'm humble, I'm grateful, but when it's time for you to showcase, you need to showcase. You know, like there's times I think people don't like talking about their accomplishments because they think it's gonna make other people feel bad. But it ain't your fault that you were great.
Yeah.
It's not your fault that you did well. Actually, it's a compliment. So if you did well at something, you should speak on that. What's the old mantra? Closed mouth don't get fed.
Yeah.
So if you don't talk about yourself in these rooms, if you don't talk about yourself in these resumes, how you going in these interviews? How you going to get what you need? Whatever you don't say, people not gonna know. Whatever you don't display, people not gonna care about. So I think people kind of got like a humble complex, man. It's like they're like, oh, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. No, maybe you should, because your livelihood could depend on it if you don't.
Yeah. Nah,
That makes sense?
Nah, that definitely makes
Okay.
sense. Like I always like to say, if you feel like you gotta dim your light around somebody you around, you're not around the right people.
Yeah, man. Please, all
For
the
real.
man.
So
All,
it's like I only want to be around people that continue to motivate me. Like you, yeah. So you
Man,
definitely
yeah.
dropping gems. Bro.
you want some trophies? You need to show it.
Yeah. Nah.
You know?
That's big facts.
That could be a controversial statement, but if you got plaques,
Yeah.
yeah. So
For sure. Plug it in. So, all right. So let's dive in some more, right? So, what are some of like the biggest challenges that you face as a tech recruiter?
yeah, man. I think the markets and being able to adjust with the economy and the job markets, and because there's a lot of things that are out of a recruiter's control. There's been multiple times in my career where candidates were in abundance and then candidates were scarce. And one of the direct correlations with that is sometimes it's an employer's market and then sometimes it's a candidate's market. Just like in real estate, sometimes it's a buyer's market, sometimes it's a seller's market, and depending on what market type it is, can give you some indication on how easily accessible a home may or may not be. I think that's one of the big things recruiters have to always be mindful of, because understanding that and also being aware that having an awareness to know that how can I creatively maneuver around it, right? When it's an employer's market, the job opportunities are limited, but the candidates are abundant. So it's a supply demand thing, right? I mean, a lot of people can say we're kind of dealing with that right now, or we're kind of getting out of ways of that, right? There was a whole lot of layoffs in the tech industry, like thousands of people, right? So you have a whole bunch of talented technical professionals, but the jobs are limited, right? So this is an employer's market where it's quite literally easier to find talent for the recruiters who have openings, right? So, like, I've heard stories from like my peer recruiters. Man, they'll put a job posting up at 12 noon. By 3 o'clock, they got 500 applicants. They got to shut it down. That's the indication of a employer market. Also, when you think about even like job offers, another indication of an employer market, when you see it consistently across the market where salaries may be a little bit down, relocation packages might not be as abundant. They might be a little bit more conservative across the board, not just one or two employers here or there, but across the board. That's an indication that it's an employer market. Now, where it becomes more challenging is when it's a candidate market, where we were just in last year. This time last year, we were in the candidate market, right? Meaning that you had more passive talent than you had active talent. Active candidates are candidates who are on job boards every day applying for jobs, right? Passive candidates they're not necessarily looking like that, but if you reach out to them at the right time, they may be interested, right? There have been several times where we couldn't get applicants, so we had to go out and dig and source, right? Because it's a candidate market. Hey, I only want to work remote. Hey, TikTok over here offer me this. Can you offer me that, right? Hey, I got unlimited PTO. You guys gonna offer that? If it's no, then don't worry about it. Like being able to navigate around that, and all those things come from economic factors, inflation, things that might not necessarily be in a recruiter's control. They can influence it to a degree, but you can't necessarily control it. So I think that's been one of the difficult things. Also, keeping up with the technology, right? I don't, like I said, as a recruiter, I don't have to be a technologist myself, but if I'm gonna get on the phone and I'm trying to recruit a DevOps engineer, or if I'm trying to recruit a software development and test engineer, I kind of really got to know what's going on in that space. That's going to give me credibility as a recruiter to the candidate. That's also going to give me a lens of credibility to the hiring manager. And that's really what's important, right? Another thing I'll give you, man, 'cause I know I'm giving you a lot.
Keep plugging in, bro. Keep plugging in.
Like, as a recruiter, I mean, I tell this to, like, the recruiters that I mentor. You got to know what's going on in the market. Talent migration. Why are people leaving California and moving to Vegas and Texas and Phoenix? You got to know that. You got to know why people are leaving the Northeast and moving to the South. Where talent is going and why they're going there. That makes a great tech recruiter. A recruiter, period, but especially in tech, right? There's cost of living issues, right? There's centralized hubs where there's more just an abundance of tech jobs, especially now that remote jobs are dropping a little bit and more companies, especially in the tech space, are going more to in-house or hybrid. These are things that are going to factor into your sourcing strategy. These are things that are going to factor into the candidate experience. These are things that are going to factor into, as a tech recruiter, you working with a hiring manager and helping them come up with ways to identify and attract talent.
Okay. Nah, that's dope. So one of the questions that I have, right, a lot of people might see things about tech, now we talking about personal brand, we putting it out there, right? We have all these different organizations that have, different tech conferences, different things about tech. So kind of give me, and I know a lot of people want to get into tech now because they're like, oh, I can work remote, right? I can just work from home and all this other stuff. Kind of give me, what are some of the common misconceptions that you see or myths of working in the tech industry? Do you see
for people trying to navigate into tech, like your first job in tech might not be the job you want. My first job being a tech recruiter wasn't the job I wanted. I always say, know what you want to do. One, two, take certifications and boot camps that make sense. You got to be strategic about it. But once you get in, like, I'm not saying it can't happen. If it does, fantastic. But your first role when you're trying to enter in might not be the role you want. If your goal is to be a cybersecurity engineer and, have all these different CompTIA certifications, if you don't have that experience, you might need to get one or two solid, credible certifications, maybe take a boot camp, and maybe be a customer success manager first, or maybe do tech support first. These are just examples, because at least you'll have some, again, you'll be able to talk about the product or the service conversationally. You'll know about the product. You'll have some key elements in your tool set about the product, the capabilities of the product. That could be a good launching pad into be a cybersecurity engineer, right? So your first role, I think a lot of people think I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna get that role. Now, the more technical the role is, that may not be the case. I'm not saying it's not possible, but there's possibilities and there's probabilities. It's possible. Is it probable? So take that into account. Like, the role that you want may not be your first role. I think that's one of the big misconceptions. I think another thing too is that I'm a contributor to basketball. You know how, like, they say, like, when you get to college, you end up playing college basketball like I did, or you end up, playing in the NBA. Yeah. The work starts once you get there. Like, when you get to the league, or when you get to playing college basketball, congratulations. The hard part is staying there. The hard part is staying on the team. The hard part is keeping your scholarship. The hard part is, like, even, I haven't been in the NBA, but I know guys that are, I can, talk about it contextually. It's the hard part is staying there. Yeah. It's just like in the tech space, man. Like, people think that, okay, I'm in. Man, let me tell you something, man. It's people, while you doing this, man, it's people in Starbucks right now coding for fun. For fun.
Talk about it.
You know what I mean? They, like, it's people, like, doing, it's whole meetup groups. people meeting at the park. All of them got their laptop, they got their Wi-Fi hub thing. They sitting there getting it.
Yeah.
So once you get that, it's great that you got there, but it's very similar to like athletics. That's why I say you always got to keep your competitive edge, and you always got to be wanting to upskill. So I think that's one of the bigger things I see is that once I get there, I'm good. Like, yeah, you good, but now it's a matter of staying there, because I'm telling you that technology, I mean, we can even see it now with all the AI stuff. Like, the technology is just always going up every so often, and you got to be able to stay on track with that. So I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Nah, that's dope. So that's a perfect segue. I wanted to really go into now just about like, how can you help our listeners, right? Let's talk about the different services that you may offer, or different different plans that you may offer. How can you help with that?
Yeah, so I've like I said, man, I've been in the game for a long time. So I have a great perspective because I've been both the recruiter and the candidate. And I've been the hiring manager when I was hiring recruiters, right? So like I said, I've been in, probably at this point in my career, I've been in thousands of interviews, whether I was doing them myself or I was in a room just kind of looking, seeing all those trends that make people successful, make people unsuccessful. I done plenty of LinkedIn sourcing sessions with hiring managers where I've seen trends throughout my career of what they like, what they don't like, resume review sessions, what they like, what they don't like, interview debriefs, thousands at this point, where how they talk about candidates after they interview. So what I have quite essentially is I have this we call the Bobby the Builder chat.
Okay.
You can come in and ask me anything industry related. If you want to talk about like, hey, what's how these jobs trending right now? If you want to learn about Blacks in Technology Foundation, if you want to learn about, just talk about diversity, that's more of a general thing. But then there's the resume breakdown session. The resume breakdown session, I basically go through and I look at your resume just like a recruiter or hiring manager look at your resume, because I've been in these rooms and I've seen it. I was like, okay, they're going to ask about this. Like this and this, right? And I look at it like in real time. It's like applying for a job, and then the recruiter calls you and they look at your application while you're on the phone. That's how my resume breakdown session is. I don't write resumes, and I'll explain here in a second. Hopefully we ain't going over time. But I break it down. I break down your resume top to bottom, left to right, and put you in the psyche of the recruiter and the hiring manager, what they look for and what questions they gonna ask, right? And I think it's important to teach people why sections in a resume exist. And I don't think a lot of people do that. Like, they just write your resume, here you go. But you don't know why they did what they did. My goal is you do a resume breakdown session with me. I've given you enough where you can go and you can understand your resume. So you ain't got to keep coming back to me. Because if you keep coming back to me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to set you up so I give you what you need so you can go forward and not necessarily need to have another resume breakdown session with me. Bobby told me the purpose of the summary section. He told me why the skills section is important. He told me the format, you know what I'm saying, that, and why format is important, right? I mean, there's so much I can go into. Even the LinkedIn overview session. I always say your resume stakes your game, LinkedIn sets the frame. You know what I mean? It's two different things, but they go together. I've had career coaches argue with me about this, man. It's like, oh yeah, the LinkedIn profile, the experience section shouldn't look exactly like the resume. I rebuke. It should. Because oftentimes when I'm doing these sourcing sessions, the hiring manager will see your LinkedIn profile sometimes before you see your resume. I've had hiring managers tell me numerous times they didn't want to talk to a candidate because they had nothing in the experience section. They had no keywords. They had no impact. So they had none of that, right? So but then you go look at their resume, they got all of that. So we talk about that and how you make it optimal. You know what I'm saying? Like your resume states the game, LinkedIn sets the frame. Because not only do you need to have your experience, you need to have other things associated with your LinkedIn profile and digital presence that will make you stand out, right? Mock interview sessions. I basically sit down and interview. I got certain questions, no matter what the interview is. Now, I can't do a technical interview, but I can at least, I can phone interview you, like a phone interview. I can sit down and go through the STAR method, which we ain't even got into. I'm going to walk you through that STAR method. and I'm gonna ask questions in the STAR method, and I'm gonna want you to respond in the STAR method because it's a structured way to basically tell a story. So I have that. That's just a few.
Okay.
So.
Nah, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. So how can our audience and guests stay in touch with you? What's your social medias that we can connect with you offline?
Yeah, no doubt. So my Instagram, follow me on Instagram. It's just Bobby McNeil Jr., all one word. I'm doing a lot of stuff there. LinkedIn, Bobby McNeil. Just type that in. Follow my hashtag on LinkedIn, Bobby the Builder. I'm building mindsets. I'm building good habits and helping you build your career. Also, follow me on Twitter. Just Bobby the Builder. You can find me there. Facebook, just my name, Bobby McNeil. Should be pretty easy to find. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now we appreciate you plugging in with us today, Bobby, aka Bobby the Builder.
Yes, sir.
You've been building out a lot of gems and skills for us. We're gonna have to plug in another time, man, because we need about 2-3 hours to plug in. But we appreciate you plugging in on the STEM Plug Podcast, episode 10. Make sure you like and subscribe. Keep plugging in.